There's a scene most people skipped. Season 4. Missy is sitting alone at the kitchen table after everyone's gone to bed. No lines, no music cue. She just sits there, and the camera holds on her face for about 3 seconds longer than it needs to, and then it cuts away. That's it. That's the whole scene. But here's the thing. She's looking at Sheldon's empty chair. Not her room. Not the door. His chair. And if you understand what that chair represents, the spot that absorbed every room, every resource, every conversation this family ever had, then you understand that Missy Cooper wasn't just looking at furniture. She was looking at everything she never got. And the camera caught it. And then the show moved on. Because the show always moved on. That's what this video is about. Not Sheldon. Not Mary. Not the finale controversy, or the George affair retcon, or any of the things the fandom argues about every week. Missy Cooper. The twin who lost the most in that house, and got the least amount of airtime to show it. And what I'm going to show you by the end of this, is that the writers knew exactly what they were doing to her. They just decided she wasn't worth explaining. Grab a seat at Cooper's house. And don't forget to subscribe. Let's start with what everyone thinks they know. Everyone who watched Young Sheldon will tell you the show was about a gifted kid from East Texas, trying to survive his own family. That's the premise. That's the marketing. That's the whole reason the show existed, to explain how Sheldon Cooper became Sheldon Cooper. But here's what nobody says out loud. Missy Cooper is, by almost every measurable definition, the more interesting character. She's funnier. She's sharper. She reads people in a way that Sheldon physically cannot. In the pilot, the very first episode, she delivers the clearest, most accurate summary of her brother that any character delivers across all 7 seasons. She is 9 years old. She has been alive for 9 years, and she already understands him better than the adults around her ever will. And the show just keeps her there, in the background, doing punchlines, getting 2 lines per episode while everyone else gets an arc. Now, why? Why would you build a character that electric and then refuse to use her? I'll tell you, but first you need to understand what she was actually dealing with in that house. Because this is where it gets uncomfortable. The Cooper household, and I say this as someone who genuinely loves this show, was one of the most quietly unfair environments in the history of family sitcoms. And Missy got the worst of it, in a way that almost nobody talks about. Sheldon gets a private tutor. Sheldon gets to skip grades. Sheldon gets driven to a university at age 9 because his brain requires special handling. And what does Missy get? She gets told she's normal. And in that house, normal wasn't a neutral word. It was a consolation prize. Missy waited. 7 years. She waited. But here's the part that should make you feel something. She wasn't passive about it. She didn't just absorb the neglect and go quiet. She adapted. She became the funniest person in every room. Because funny was the only currency she had access to. She became the emotional translator for the family, because nobody else was paying attention to what was actually happening between people. She became, without anyone asking her to, the person who held the temperature of that house. And she did it without a single adult in that family ever noticing. Actually, wait. That's not entirely true. There was one moment, one scene, where someone saw her. Season 6. George and Missy are sitting on the porch. She's going through something. She breaks up with Marcus, she's trying to process what she wants, and George just sits with her. Doesn't fix it. Doesn't pivot to a lesson. Just stays. It's one of the most quietly devastating scenes in the show. Not because of what's said, because of how obvious it is that Missy needed this constantly and was only getting it once. And then George Cooper dies at the end of that season. So that was the one time. That was her one window of being fully seen. And it closed permanently. Now, if you followed this show closely, and I think you have, or you wouldn't still be watching this, you already know what the fandom says about the finale. That Missy got robbed. That her ending felt unfinished. That we got a 2-sentence update about her life in the epilogue, while Georgie got a whole spin-off, and Sheldon got the Nobel Prize speech. But I want to go further than that. Because the finale isn't where Missy got robbed. That's just where it became impossible to ignore. Let me show you the pattern. Because it goes back to season 1. By the time she's 10 years old, Missy Cooper has already demonstrated, on screen, explicitly, that she is perceptive in a way that no other character in the show matches. She understands social dynamics that Sheldon will never understand. She clocks when adults are lying to her. She understands loneliness in a way that a child that age typically doesn't, because she's been practicing it her whole life. Living in the shadow of a prodigy does something to a kid. It teaches them to become invisible on purpose. To shrink. To make themselves small enough that nobody feels the need to explain why they're getting less. Missy Cooper mastered invisibility by the time she was 11. The problem is, she was too smart to not notice she'd done it. If you watch season 3 with this in mind, just go back and watch any scene where Missy is in the room but not the focus. You'll notice something. She's always watching, always tracking. She clocks every shift in energy between her parents. She sees the Pastor Rob situation before Mary fully processes it herself. She notices when her dad is pulling away. She notices when Sheldon is getting extra accommodation and nobody's explaining why. She sees everything, and she never gets asked what she sees. This is where it gets genuinely strange. Because the writers, and I think about this a lot, the writers built a character who is essentially a walking emotional barometer for the most dysfunctional family in Medford, Texas. And then they used her almost exclusively for comic relief. That's not an accident. That's a choice, and it's the choice I want to sit with for a minute. If you haven't subscribed to Cooper's House yet, and if you're deep enough into this video to still be here, you probably should. This is what we do every week. The stuff underneath the surface of a show you thought you already understood. But back to Missy. Here's what I think actually happened. And this is the thing that recontextualizes the whole run of the show when you see it. The writers knew Missy was the more interesting character. You can feel it in how she was written in the first 2 seasons. She gets moments of genuine depth, genuine pain, genuine complexity. But at some point, I'd guess around season 3, a decision got made at the show level. The decision was, this show is about Sheldon. Sheldon is the anchor. Sheldon is the IP. Everything else serves that. And Missy, smart, emotionally precise, naturally funny Missy, got reclassified. She went from character to function. Her function was to be the twin who wasn't the genius. Her function was to represent normalcy so that Sheldon's abnormality had something to bounce off. Her function was to deliver punchlines. And the tragedy is, she did it so well that nobody noticed the cost. Reagan, Revord, the actress who played Missy, has said in interviews that she felt her character had so much more to give. And you can feel it when she's on screen. There's this sense of potential that keeps almost breaking through, and then the scene ends, and we're back to Sheldon in the physics lab. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. The part that changes everything. Missy Cooper's arc, the one they never fully wrote, was actually the most complete arc in the whole show. It was right there. All the pieces were already in place. Think about what her story actually was. A girl born at exactly the same moment as a genius. Spends her entire childhood being defined by what she isn't. Not the smart one. Not the one with the future. Not the one the family builds its identity around. Learns to survive it by being sharp and funny and emotionally present in ways nobody around her can match. Loses her father, the one adult who ever actually saw her, before she can have a real conversation with him as an equal. And then what? A line in the finale about her getting remarried. A flash forward that barely registers. That's it. That's Missy Cooper. 7 years, 6 seasons, building towards something that never arrived. And here is the contradiction at the center of everything. Young Sheldon is supposed to be a love letter to this family. Sheldon's adult voiceover is supposed to be him, finally, looking back with warmth and perspective. But the way Missy is written across that run, the way she keeps getting pushed to the edges of the frame in her own family story, that's not love. That's exactly what she experienced in real time, just recreated in the telling of it. Adult Sheldon narrating the show about his own childhood and centering himself even in that. Even in retrospect, even when you give him decades of distance and supposedly wisdom, Missy never got a narrator. Never got someone looking back at her life and saying, here's what she was carrying. Here's what it cost her. Here's what she deserved that she never got. The show couldn't even give her that. And then there's the scene that I keep coming back to. The one that the show slides past in about 15 seconds like it's nothing. Season 5. Missy finds out, not from her parents, not from a conversation, not from anyone sitting her down. She just finds out that Sheldon had a heart thing. A scare. Something happened. And she processes it in about 1 line. And then the episode moves on. That's it. That's how the show handles Missy learning that her twin brother almost died. 1 line. And then back to Sheldon. Because here's what the show never let itself fully reckon with. Missy and Sheldon are twins. Not just siblings, twins. They shared a space before they shared a world. Whatever happens to him happens to her in a way that doesn't translate to anyone else in that house. And the show, across 7 seasons, almost never used that. Almost never went inside what it costs her to watch her twin leave. First to the university, then to Caltech, then to a life that the Nobel Prize speech eventually closes the chapter on. And she stays in Medford. She stays. And the show barely notices. Ask yourself this. When does Missy Cooper get to be the point of the episode? Not the comic relief. Not the B-plot. Not the one who shows up in the last 2 minutes to land the joke that resets the family's mood. When does she get to be the reason the camera is there? A handful of times across 7 seasons. That's the answer. A handful. And every single one of those times, you can feel the show remembering that she exists. And then forgetting again. There's a moment in the finale, and I want to end here because this is the one that stays with me, where adult Sheldon is giving his Nobel Prize speech. He thanks his family. He talks about his mother. He talks about his father. He gets to Missy and he says, and these are almost the exact words, that she showed him that not everyone sees the world the way he does. That's it, 7 years. That's what she meant to him, rendered into a single sentence. A lesson. A contrast. A reference point for understanding himself better. She spent her entire childhood losing in a house that was built around his winning. And when the show finally gave him the moment to say something real about her, something that honored what she actually was, he made her about him. Maybe that's the most honest thing the show ever did. Not the tribute they wrote for George. Not the ending they gave Mary. The one sentence about Missy. Because that sentence, that tiny, insufficient, casually delivered sentence, is exactly what she got every single episode for 7 years. One line, and then back to Sheldon. Tell me honestly in the comments, did you feel this way about Missy while you were watching, or did it only hit you after the finale? Because I read every single one, and I want to know if you saw it the same way I did. And while you're down there, look at what's coming next. Because the next video goes somewhere this one was pointing at the whole time. You're not going to see it coming. Stay here at Cooper's house. I'll see you in the next one.